All right. The show is called NBA 1 through 5. I've collected the brightest minds in basketball. Hopefully, we'll entertain and inform. Jackson Gatlin, host of Locked On Rockets, Wes Goldberg, host of Locked On Heat, and myself, Cyrus Saatsaz, host of Locked On Warriors. We're going to break down the NBA and who's finishing 1 through 5 in each division next. This is NBA 1 through 5, part of a Locked On production. NBA 1 through 5, your NBA preview extravaganza.
Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, gentlemen. I hope that open worked out for you. I'm by no means a video production expert, but you can follow Wes Goldberg on Twitter at WC Goldberg. Jackson, I don't have your Twitter account memorized. How can people follow you?
People can follow me at JT Gatlin. I don't know if many Warriors fans are going to want to follow me since I tweet predominantly Houston Rockets stuff, but you can follow me at JT Gatlin.
Well, you also do Locked On NBA. So
I do. I talk and preach about the NBA at large, but I am also still in the Houston market. And I know that, the Bay Area and Houston, we've been at odds with each other over the last few years. Things don't really matter as much right now since Houston's at the bottom of the scrap heap. So it's all good.
We'll find out how they're going to fare in just a minute. And then Wes, of course, hosts Locked On Heat, also a Locked On NBA host. I'm the outsider here when it comes to that. Someday maybe I'll join the Cool Kids Club. Let's start with the Southeast Division. Is it safe to say, gentlemen, that's the worst division of the six? Anybody disagree with that notion?
I think that's fair. I think the only one that the Southwest Division might be the other one that only get Dallas and Memphis is kind of comparable to Miami and Atlanta to me, and then you've got
all right
tanking teams.
That's
so
fair.
It's one of those two. That's fair.
All right, so I guess Wes, I'll start with you. Who is going to finish? This one's in a pretty obvious one, but I'll ask anyways. Who's finishing first in the Southeast Division? Start with you, Wes, and why?
Sure. No, I think the way that Paolo Banchero came out in Summer League, I think it's very clear that he's going to make an immediate impact. And so I'm going dark horse with the Magic here. I'm just kidding. The Miami Heat are going to win the Southeast Division.
He had me in the first half. I was like, oh man, he's about to rile up some Heat fans and like gain a bunch of allies and Orlando Magic fans. But no, the Miami Heat have to be the favorite pick here in the Southeast Division. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Well, let's break down real quick their offseason changes. They added Nikola Jovic.
That'll be fast.
I have no idea if he's any good or not. They lost PJ Tucker and Markieff Morris. Markieff Morris was lost pretty much for like the last year when Nikola Jokic just put him out. No, do people don't talk about that enough, by the way? That
they talk about it in Miami plenty. That's still brought up all the time.
But no one else talks about that, man. I don't know why.
Nobody else cares about it. Mostly because nobody liked Markieff Morris to begin with. He's just kind of one of those unlikable players that fans just across the NBA don't like. Either Morris brother, like people just don't like them. But yeah, no, people.
The Morai, if you will. That's what you got to call them when you're referring to them together.
All right, and Jackson, would you agree the Heat are number one?
Yeah, I think you got to go favorites with the Heat at number one. They're going to have the consistency. They're bringing back a lot of their pretty much all their main pieces. You do have that question mark of like maybe, does Kyle Lowry regress a little bit as he continues to age, stuff like that? I mean, there are some question marks there about the health of the team. How much more wear and tear can Jimmy Butler take? They don't have a true four on the roster anywhere. And seemingly Jimmy Butler doesn't want to play the four. So, I mean, I don't know exactly how that's going to fare as they navigate the regular season, but I still think they're absolutely, playoff locks and favorites at the top of the Southeast Division for sure.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, it's going to be Caleb Martin starting at the four to open up the season. And I actually think he's going to do a pretty good job. There was moments last year. He was basically the backup power forward last year. He is a little small at 6'7", 6'6", but he's super athletic, really strong for his frame. Like I said, he was basically PJ Tucker's backup last year. It's going to look different. It's going to look a lot different defensively. It's just when you have PJ Tucker in there, he's able to muck things up and switch onto centers and help Bam in those ways. Like Caleb Martin's not switching onto centers. He's going to be limited to positions 1 through 4. But I also think offensively, there's way more of a ceiling now. PJ Tucker is basically a corner 3-point specialist, but limited to doing that, right? Caleb Martin is a much more dynamic offensive player. So I think they're going to try to push the pace, take more threes. And they're going to keep moving the ball the way that they have throughout the years. So You're gonna have to make it up offensively, but defensively, like you still have a lineup with Jimmy, Bam, and Kyle. Like they're gonna be really good defensively no matter what.
Look, Bam is also the third best center in the NBA, so that helps out a ton.
Yes.
The center position still exists. I wasn't aware. Okay, so we're all in agreement. Miami Heat, best in the Southeast. I'm gonna guess number 2, Atlanta Hawks. Jackson, I'll start with you. Is that your second place team?
Yeah, it's got to be the Hawks. I know they had a bit of a disappointing season last year, right? You know, relative to their expectations, especially when they were the prior year, right? That kind of lightning in a bottle team, feel good story, out in the Eastern Conference, right there alongside the New York Knicks, as far as the two kind of maybe teams that took that surprising leap that season. Obviously, Trae Young is electric. Adding DeJounte Murray to that backcourt, maybe he shores up some of the weaknesses alongside Trae Young, gives them a secondary ball handler to kind of maybe unlock some more opportunities within that team. I do have question marks about that Hawks team and what their true ceiling is. But then when you look at the rest of the division, you're like, okay, yeah, they're the clear cut number 2 bet, because I've got it broken up, bracketed based on like gaps in these divisions, and I've got like a gigantic gap between the Heat, Hawks, and then it's just this massive gap, and you've got Wizards, Magic, and Hornets at the bottom.
Yeah, Wes, your thoughts?
Atlanta's the number 2 team. I think they're going to learn from last year. They went into last year thinking, oh yeah, Eastern Conference Finals appearance. Like we're just going to build on that. And it kind of felt like they gassed themselves up a little bit too much and didn't really execute and didn't have the discipline overall as a team. I think that they've reversed course on that. I think they were humbled by last year's experience. It's still a really talented team, man. Like I think Trae Young, like he's probably not going to be ever one of the best, 10 guys in the NBA, but he's such a great offensive player that he's able to just get guys involved. I think the DeJounte Murray thing is going to go a little bit smoother than people think. And then there's enough depth there. They're also a team that can make a move midseason to improve the roster too, and I think we got to keep that in mind. But like Jackson said, it's even if they disappoint even a little bit, it's going to be hard to kind of go further down than number 2 in this division.
Right, and just to let people know, they added DeJounte Murray in that trade. Excuse me, with the Spurs. They added Justin Holiday, Aaron Holiday, Frank Kaminsky, Jared Culver, and they drafted AJ Griffin. They lost Danilo Gallinari, DeLon Wright, Kevin Huerter, which a lot of people like, Kevin Knox, Georgie Dang, Jacques Lindell, Lou Williams, who's still out there as a free agent. That's just kind of weird to me. I would think he had some value, but any last thoughts before we move on from the Hawks? I agree. Weird team. 2 years ago, they're in the Eastern Conference Finals. They might have gotten a little lucky getting there. And then last year, they were a playing team. So it's hard to read. It is hard to read. But any final thoughts? Are we moving on?
It wouldn't shock me if they were back in the play-in tournament, but that's more a reflection of how deep the Eastern Conference is,
right?
Than anything else. I think they're going to be a better team than they were last year, regardless of their ultimate standing.
Agree on that standpoint. I didn't know if we were going to get like into, potential playoff seeding implications while we're doing these, kind of 1 through 5 division previews. But I do kind of have the Hawks somewhere in that play-in bracket, maybe a bit more towards the top of the play-in, kind of vying for one of those potential like last concrete spots in the playoffs. But it could kind of swing either way. I think they've got the ability to maybe be a 6 seed, 5-6 seeds, but they could also be at the bottom end of the play-in range. It's kind of a wide, disparity there.
I totally agree with you. So who's going to finish in third place? This is where it gets a little weird because you have the Orlando Magic up and coming. You have the Washington Wizards, who are the most bleh team in arguably NBA history, the worst nickname in all of professional sports, in my humble opinion. And then you have the Charlotte Hornets, who 1 minute
it's the Cleveland Guardians. They're worse.
And all it took was one horrible crime to make them an abysmal team. Who's finishing third? Wes, I'll start with you.
I think maybe I'm a year too early on this, but I'm gonna go with the Magic. I love that roster. I kind of came out of the gate with a joke here, but I love Paolo Banchero. That dude is legit. And I like the depth on that roster, man. Like Wendell Carter Jr. still really young, but really, really good. I love Wagner there. I think that the Warriors should have taken him, honestly, not to get into that whole conversation, but like he is such a great player for that team. Just sort of your perfect second banana next to Paolo Banchero. I still think Jalen Suggs is going to be ready for a bounce back year. I thought his rookie year was really disappointing. If they kind of figure out a role for him, I think he can maybe surprise some people. And I think they're well coached. I do. And so I like their upside. They just have more guys who could pop. Where you look at the Wizards, they have Bradley Beal, sure. But like after that, who's going to pop? Like it's Denny Advia, who I still like, but then it's like Rui Hachimura is not even getting his extension. They're not really, high on him. like Corey Kispert's kind of nice, but he's got a ceiling. So they don't have like as many options. Like they don't really like they feel like the safer pick now, but they really don't have as many options to like kind of finish third or improve even as the season goes on. They even could just pull the plug on the season altogether if they really want to try to tank for Wembanyama. So, and I don't think Orlando is in that zone. I don't think they have any interest in doing that. I think they want to compete for a playoff spot. I think they have more motivation. And so I like the Magic number 3.
Jackson, your thoughts?
I kind of wanted to go almost an inverse there and go with Warriors, if only, or not Warriors, sorry. Wrong W team. Wizards there, if only because I feel like the Magic have a ton of talent, right? And I do love so many of the guys on their roster. I think Paolo Banchero is probably going to be the favorite for Rookie of the Year coming out of the gate. He's going to have an immediate impact on that team, but it's also such an incredibly young team, and I think they're going to just make a lot of those young team type mistakes to where they might be in certain games and they might just win some games just off sheer talent alone, but it's going to take them a long time to try and figure out how to be a successful NBA team, I think, just collectively across the board. And from that standpoint, then when you're also looking at the current dumpster fire that is the Charlotte Hornets. I think that it's going to be very close between these 3 teams, all kind of fighting it out, duking out for who's going to be the worst in the division. I'm going to place the Wizards ever so slightly, like not even a half a tier, like a quarter of a tier above these other 2 teams, just because I think they're just going to get dragged to some extra wins here and there just because some of the vets on their roster.
I'm with you. I'm going to give the Wizards just a smidge of an advantage only because of the experience. First of all, what do you 2 think about Markelle Fultz? I mean, talk about a disappointment. He's inching closer and closer to all-time status for Buss as a number 1 pick. I believe he's injured right now. Wes, what are your thoughts on Markelle Fultz, man? Do you ever see him succeeding in the NBA? He's a backup point guard for the Magic now.
I think his best case scenario is sort of how Derrick Rose turned his career around when you start to strip away the expectations of things. And then you just kind of become a solid backup point guard. That's probably his best case scenario. It is really just, I saw him live in college when he was playing Berkeley or Cal up in Berkeley. And I came away from that game like, oh my God, this guy's amazing. He's the number 1 pick. I don't think it was a mistake taking him number 1. I just think weird things happened to him early in his career that kind of set him off course. But he had so much talent and he was such a naturally gifted player. He had such great feel for the game. It's a shame what happened to him. But yeah, look, and that's why I think that if they are able to give up on the Fultz experiment in Orlando and Fultz is able to sort of kind of accept a lesser role off the bench, and they're able to kind of give Jalen Suggs the keys a little bit, surrounded by the playmaking that's already on that roster with Wagner and Banchero, I think that's a nice young trio. But to Jackson's point earlier, like I said, I might be a year early on the Orlando Magic, but just for the sake
you might
of
or you might not, right?
I might not.
It's hard to tell. God, man, until I brought up Fultz's name, I had forgotten about his rookie year. Remember the free throw thing and how people were like, they were hiding the media from him shooting free throws. Did we ever even figure out what happened there? Like, was it just an injury or was it a mental thing? Like, that was weird. That was just weird. Want to quickly announce the changes both teams have made. The Wizards added Monte Morris from the Denver Nuggets, added DeLon Wright, Will Barton, Taj Gibson. I don't know how that guy's still in the league, and Johnny Davis. The most bleh team in NBA history, the Wizards. It's just sad they even exist, in my opinion. And then the Orlando Magic added Paolo Banchero, who I think should be more of a center. Would you agree with that or no? They're listing him as
he's a
4.
wing. He's a
wing.
He's basically he's a 4. He's got the size to play the 4, but he's basically plays like a wing. So
Wendell Carter Jr. is going to be the starting center. And see, Franz Wagner. First of all, that is funny. You because you actually hosted a Locked On Warriors, Wes, where you said the Warriors should not draft Kuminga. You were all in on Franz Wagner, and you're still holding that, correct?
I like Kuminga a lot. I just never like that take was never anti Jonathan Kuminga. It's just anti him having an opportunity in Golden State to develop properly. I think guys that are that raw need a lot of playing time, and I just never saw it happening for him. But like he's gonna get it this year, so who knows? But I just imagine Franz Wagner on this Warriors team, though. There would be zero questions about it. He doesn't have the ceiling that Kuminga does, but could you it's a perfect fit. I stand by it, man.
I can't argue with you. I love Kuminga, but when you put it that way, and then let's go to the Hornets, who I guess we're all going to agree with is going to be in last place.
Do we have to talk about the Hornets? No.
Just really quickly. I'm just going to announce who they added. Mark Williams is who they drafted. They brought back a coach they fired in Steve Clifford after
trying to get Kenny Atkinson.
Yeah, exactly. After Kenny Atkinson turned him down. I forgot where Montrezl Harrell went. He left.
He's in Philadelphia.
Philly, thank you. Okay, so yeah, this is just an abysmal team, right? I mean,
This is a dark horse team to actually finish with the worst record in the league. I truly believe that. I think Melo Ball is obviously extremely gifted. That's not a hot take, but his whole thing is he needs guys to pass to, and he's amazing at passing them the ball and getting guys involved. But he has got no guys who can make any shots on this team or do really anything. And so I think that the you're going to have diminishing returns on LaMelo and how special he is this year, just based on the teammates that he has. And yeah, like you said, they brought back a coach that they didn't like because they had no other option, because nobody else wants to take that job. I mean, Kenny Atkinson was hired and he got a look inside the organization. He was like, nah, actually.
He said, I'm out. Never mind.
Yeah.
I got other places to be.
So the only guy that they could get was somebody who was unemployed, who already worked there once before and was probably like, well, I did it once. I could probably figure this out again. It's bad vibes. You hate everything that's going on with Bridges there. It's really bad energy, and that could bad energy could sink a season. So I'm not predicting that they're gonna have the worst record in the league, but they're a dark horse candidate to have the worst record in the league.
The Bridges thing is so sad. I mean, you're talking about a guy who was literally about to sign a $120 million deal with someone, and just done. He's done. He's in jail.
And on top of that, they just had the James Bouknight thing happen. So just all over the place, this Hornets organization has left, right, and center problems across the board, and it's not looking up anytime soon.
All right, so we move to the Central Division. Is there any disagreement on the Bucks finishing first? The Cavaliers might have a say, but no. Jackson, I'll start with you. Who's first in the Central?
No, it's got to be Bucks. You'd be a madman to bet against the Bucks here. I mean, the only thing that could have the Bucks not finish at the top of the division, right, is injuries, and we take that into consideration when we make these predictions. So I think we're just operating in good faith here, assuming health across the board for all teams involved. I think you have to take the Bucks as the favorite. Giannis, that entire core coming back one more time, they're going to be favorites to make it out of the Eastern Conference, probably barring injuries.
Wes, your thoughts?
Yeah, we already have the Chris Middleton thing happening, but that to me, he had this quiet offseason surgery that nobody's really talking about, and it seems like they're sort of slow playing it, understanding that they need him back for the playoffs. So, look, they've got Giannis. He's the best player in the world. They have a framework that works. This is a system team that knows how to execute its system. I have Cleveland, you mentioned them. I love their talent. I love their top-end talent. I like their coach. I like everything that's going on. But they got young guys, and they have things that they have to figure out, and that takes a while. Milwaukee knows exactly who they are. And I think Giannis, by virtue of going out in the playoffs last year, he probably thought that team, had Middleton not gotten hurt, should have beaten Boston. They probably would have beaten Boston. And probably should have been in the NBA Finals and would have had a good chance against the Warriors. Like, if you're asking Giannis, that's probably what he's thinking. So he wants to come out on a revenge tour, maybe, and show everybody that he is the best player in the league, that he should be considered that, and that the Bucks are the best team in the NBA. I think they're going to be really motivated in that way, and I think they're going to rampage through the regular season.
Yeah, and they added Joe Ingles, who at some point is expected to join the team this year, recovering from a torn ACL. Drafted Marjon Beauchamp, I hope I pronounced that correctly, and they didn't lose anybody. So they have consistency there. What are you seeing from the Cavaliers, who I think is a safe bet for second place? Are they ready? I guess I'll start with you, Wes. Like, are the Cavaliers ready to make a serious impact in the East, or do you think they're still a player or maybe some experience away?
I think they're ready to be a serious team in the Eastern Conference. Yeah, I think when you're looking at the East, it's kind of a conversation of who's going to be in the top three, and then who's going to stay out of the play-in tournament. And I think Cleveland, Miami, Atlanta, Brooklyn, Toronto, these are all sort of these teams that are beneath Boston, Milwaukee, and Philadelphia as like, okay, you're probably a playoff team, but where? Where in the standings are you going to fall? And so, like I just said, the Cavaliers are right there. Darius Garland is an awesome player. I think having Donovan Mitchell next to him is going to be also, like with Trae Young and DeJounte Murray, I think it's going to be a little bit smoother than people give him credit for, because I think Garland is naturally unselfish and can get Donovan Mitchell involved. And I think they have a good culture there where Donovan Mitchell is going to thrive, play a little bit harder on defense. And then obviously you've got Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen. I think Mobley is awesome. That's not a hot take either. He's only going to get better. He could be another dark horse for Defensive Player of the Year potentially this season. And there's enough depth there where you like it. They're probably a move away. I wouldn't pick them to come out of the East at all. But yeah, they could be a tough out in a playoff series against one of these real contenders.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd pick them as favorites to come out of the East, but I've got two teams, one in the West, one in the East, as far as just the team that could take the most significant jump compared to this past season. And to me, that's the Cavaliers in the Eastern Conference, where they could very well be in that discussion for that final kind of home court advantage spot in the playoffs, going up to even, a fourth seed, maybe even depending on how records break amongst some of those top end teams in the Eastern Conference, maybe vying for possibly even a top 3 seed if some of those other, kind of clear cut the teams that Wes named earlier, right? Boston, Sixers, and why am I blanking on the third one? Where am I at on the third team? Milwaukee. There we go. We just finished talking about Milwaukee. Right. Those 3 teams kind of you're kind of penciling them in as the top 3 in the conference. But of course, if something breaks wrong for one of those teams, maybe they're dealing with some injuries, get off to a rough start, anything like that, right? Then maybe the seeding isn't as favorable further down the line. But the Cavaliers, man, adding a Donovan Mitchell guy, a player of his caliber to the team that had a lot of success last year and then was kind of just derailed at the very end of the season due to some injuries. Obviously, losing Ricky Rubio really hurt. All those different things that they managed to then overcome. Right, they've got a great culture there in Cleveland. So I'm all in on Cavs stock. I've got them very much as the second team in that division ahead of the Chicago Bulls. And so I'm not going to earn any points from Bulls fans having them third in the division, unfortunately.
Yeah, and let's talk about the Bulls in just a second here. I quickly want to add what the Cavaliers did this offseason. They obviously traded for Donovan Mitchell. Ricky Rubio, my sheet's saying it's a key addition, but he was on the team last year, I believe. Robin Lopez was a big pickup. They drafted Khalifa Diop, Isaiah Mobley. They lost Lauri Markkanen. They traded away Colin Sexton. And I'm with you. Darius Garland and that backcourt with Mitchell could be huge. What's going on with the Bulls? I don't know why people still have hope in Lonzo Ball. I don't think he's ever going to finish a season ever. He's always going to be hurt. But they had a tremendous start last year. I think they were 27-13 to start the year, which is strong. How are they going to look this year? Jack, I'll start with you.
I mean, so much of it is dependent on health with this Bulls team. And I think that's the issues that they faced last year is they just couldn't, for the life of them, get their core guys together and healthy on the floor. You had some amazing moments from DeMar DeRozan, who was, basically on an MVP, collision course through, the better part of the early portion of the season to where you're thinking, wow, like, DeMar DeRozan is just having like a career renaissance here. He looks fantastic playing for the Bulls, but at points he was just having to do so much for that team that, maybe he's able to take a bit more of a backseat this year. If you've actually got guys in the rotation, he's not having to step up and drop 30, 35 every night, doing all the little things that he was doing to just drag that Bulls team to some wins here and there. I've got some question marks about what the true ceiling is of that Bulls team, but they've got a ton of talent. Obviously the backcourt there with DeMar DeRozan, with Zach LaVine, like their inside guys. I just, without Lonzo Ball in the picture, that's a really key piece missing for them. And like you, Wes, I just don't know if he's ever going to be truly 100% healthy again.
Yeah. Wes, is Gordon Dragic going to make any difference for this Bulls team? Because he did sign with them as a free agent. Yeah. He's likely going to be playing minutes along with Ayo Dosunmu, if I hope I pronounced that right. Your thoughts on the Bulls, Wes?
Well, Dragic will make an impact. At the very least, he'll help that locker room. He's a great locker room guy, good veteran presence. But yeah, I hate the Bulls this year. I just they just remind me of the 2012 Knicks, where it felt like, okay, you get some stuff coming together. Jeremy Lin hits some game-winning shots for you. You have a good month and a stretch, and then you sort of surpass expectations, and then you come back the next year and you just think you're going to rinse repeat a little bit. I just don't see it with Chicago. Look, I didn't think they were that good last year. I don't look, anybody that I knew. I'm not going to rag too much on the Bulls. I didn't think they were that good last year.
It starts off the segment. I hate the Bulls. I'm not going to rag too much on them.
That'll be it. Anymore. Look, DeMar DeRozan's probably already had his best year in a Bulls uniform at this point. Nikola Vucevic is on a contract year, and defensively, I just don't know how they hold up if he's sort of the anchor there. They need Patrick Williams to pop in a very big way. And I just haven't really seen it. And I don't know how good he needs to be to keep that team on the same pace that they were at last year. I have a hard time seeing them finish above Cleveland in this division. I think Cleveland is just better top down.
To me, the Bulls are a rich man's Washington Wizards, a team with some veteran talent. They're going to win just enough games to keep them away from any real big stars in the draft. They're not going to do a damn thing. Wes, I was totally with you last year, man. When people were hyping them up, they had that 27-13 start. I did not see that team doing anything. And I know injuries befell them, but they have some talent there. I mean, Alex Caruso is a solid defender. Andre Drummond joined the team. Nikola Vucevic, to me, is the biggest disappointment. I'll finish on that note with the Bulls. Like, is that guy going to do anything in the NBA, Jackson or Wes? Either of you? Any thoughts?
No, I think the Lonzo Ball and the Alex Caruso thing is so key there, because when you have them together in that backcourt, it sort of everything else now clicks into place, and there's so much less asked of everybody else, especially Vucevic defensively. Like when you have those point of attack defenders there, that's how you cover up for a subpar defender at the center position, is you have elite defenders at the point of attack. But now that you don't have one or maybe even two of those guys, sometimes there's just no way to cover up for Vucevic. So
yeah, it opens things up. No, yeah, it makes things really, really tough on your backline defense when you don't have those good point of attack defenders. So I think that was a fantastic point. And since I accidentally called Cyrus West earlier, Cyrus, I think that was a fantastic point about the Bulls' defensive issues.
Thanks, man. Thank you. I didn't care, but I was following along. So I don't think the Pistons or Pacers deserve much time from us. Who's going to finish 4th and 5th? Does it even matter? And any thoughts on the Pistons or Pacers?
The Pistons the Pistons are trying to take a leap this year, and I think they're going to be very disappointed. Like they're not ready for it yet. They are another year or two out. Look, I'm really excited by their young core. I thought they won the draft this past go around, being able to walk away with Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren, in back-to-back picks in this past year's draft. Adding that to Cade Cunningham, Sadiq Bey, Isaiah Stewart, they have a really exciting top 6, top 7 guys, young core moving forward. But the idea that they're going to be able to take that leap this season, I think they're going to be wholly disappointed for how their season ultimately pans out. And to your point, yeah, it doesn't matter between the Pistons and Pacers. They're both going to be at the bottom of the division and not even remotely sniffing a play-in spot for either of them.
The most interesting thing about the Pacers is whether or not they trade Miles Turner and Buddy Hield at the deadline, or if they just keep sticking with these guys for some reason, knowing that they want to be tanking for Victor Wembanyama. It's nothing against those guys, but they are in a different phase of that organization right now. I actually kind of like Detroit. If we're gonna do some cross division stuff, would I bet on Detroit finishing with a better record than Washington? Maybe. I kind of like the Pistons. I believe in Cade Cunningham. I love their picks. To Jackson's point. But yeah, like where I'm ready to kind of go all in with Orlando for some reason, I still think Detroit's a year away.
Yeah,
that's crazy, because I'd be willing, if we're going back to the division thing, I'd be willing to, even though I just kind of basically said the Pistons aren't going to be able to take that leap this year, I feel more confident in the Pistons and their talent coalescing this season than I do in the Magic's talent coalescing this season. Just because I think some of their guys are a little bit more NBA ready than some of the Magic guys.
And when you look at the Pistons starting 5, you're right. I mean, Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, who I see great things coming for this kid. Sadiq Bey, who had a really solid year last year. Remember he had that one 51-point game, I think. Bogdanovich, who they acquired in the trade with Utah. And then Isaiah Stewart, provided he doesn't try to kill anyone, I think might have some good minutes as well. Marvin Bagley, the third. No, he's not going to do a damn thing. Let go of that. All right, so that's the Central Division. Anything else we need to touch on before we go to the Big East? We're moving on. We ready?
Good. Move on.
All right. So the Eastern Division. I'm sorry, not the Eastern Division. The Atlantic Division. Who's going to finish first in this one? There's 3 contenders, maybe 4. This is a deep division. Celtics, Nets, 76ers, Raptors. The Knicks are amazing. I'm kidding about that. Jackson, I'll start with you. Who among those 4 is going to actually come out on top?
This is the most brutal division in the entire NBA. Like, I genuinely don't think that's a stretch. Like, you're looking at all the other divisions, and maybe you make the argument for the Pacific Division, depending on if the Lakers can actually not be a dumpster fire this go around. But I'm not putting any stock into LA, not until they figure out their Russell Westbrook dilemma. And obviously we'll talk about that when we get to that division. But right now, I'm kind of feeling Sixers at the top of the division. I think that Celtics are probably going to take a little bit of a step back without Ime Udoka. He was able to get that team to buy in a really big way. And even though the Nets look really, really great on paper, that entire situation is a powder keg ready to blow at any possible second if Kyrie Irving looks at somebody the wrong way or decides to go off and do more Kyrie Irving type things. I don't know. I've got Sixers as my favorite at the top of the division. I think James Harden is ready for a really big bounce back year. Obviously, Joel Embiid, year in, year out MVP caliber talent candidate. Arguably best big man in the NBA, second best big man. You put him right there, neck and neck with Nikola Jokic. So yeah, I'm really feeling Sixers at the top of the Atlantic Division.
And Wes, before I go to you real quick here, I just want to point out the Sixers had a fantastic offseason. They added PJ Tucker, stole him from your Miami Heat. Daniel House Jr. was added. DeAnthony Melton, who I think is a grossly underrated free agent acquisition. He was badass for the Grizzlies last year. And then Montrezl Harrell is a vast upgrade from DeAndre Jordan as your backup center. Great offseason. So I understand why you pick him first. Wes, who's your first?
So just to add, I think I might have an affinity for this Sixers team because they're basically Rockets East now. Like Daryl Morey has re-added all his former Rockets players, and once upon a time, draftee and DeAnthony Melton before he was dealt to offload, a contract for the Houston Rockets. So there's a lot of Rockets related ties to this Sixers organization now.
There you go.
Well, I'll cut your bias then and just say I believe in Philadelphia as well. I got them at the top of this Atlantic Division. It's weird, right? Because this is a really tough division. You probably could argue that it's the hardest division in the NBA, and yet there's drama happening with Boston. I don't really trust Boston to stay healthy, where with Philadelphia, it's really only Joel Embiid that you're worried about. But with Boston, there's definitely some issues there, separate of the Ime Udoka stuff. And then with Brooklyn, I don't know, show it to me first before I believe in it, I guess, at any point. And then Toronto, I love. I just don't think they're going to win. I think they can win 48 to 50 games. I don't think that's going to be enough to win this division. So I got Philly. I just think that the James Harden, Joel Embiid pick and roll is going to be unstoppable. Doc Rivers, we know, is probably going to stagger them. He might stagger them almost too much at times, but that's the kind of formula that gets you through the regular season and kind of is able to make you pile up wins, regardless of what that means for the playoffs. And so, and yeah, they're just deep. They can show guys so many different looks, whether it's PJ Tucker, you go small, Tobias Harris, you could put Maxey and Harden in the backcourt together. You could put Tybal out there for defensive looks. There's just a lot of options for Doc Rivers to work with. So I like Philadelphia at the top of the East. I'm not sleeping on Boston. I trust Philly a little bit more.
So I'm with you guys as well. I think Philly's deep. They made some great decisions this offseason. So who's going to be in second place then? Wes, I'll start with you.
I got Boston.
Boston. Okay.
I'm not going to overthink this. Yeah.
What about you, Jackson? Who's going second place in the
same exact position here? I think it's going to get spicy when we start talking about who's in third. But I think even though you maybe have some questions about Boston, I don't think they're going to fall off so hard that you are suddenly looking at them being in the third or fourth, or possibly fourth place in the division. I don't expect that like a complete meltdown top to bottom within the organization. I just think they're going to have some struggles here and there. Again, with the it's not really a cloud lingering over, but right, they just. They dealt with small season drama, right? They're not quite fully healthy yet. They're missing some key contributors. So they're not going to have an easy start to the season. But I still think it's a safe bet to have them second in the division.
So who goes third?
Jackson, I've got Raptors. I've got Raptors third.
Ooh. What do you think, Wes? Are you with them on that?
Not to steal his take, but yeah, I got the Raptors in third.
This Raptors team is good. They're a mismatch nightmare. Even though they had kind of a bummer of a preseason, I'm really high on this I was high on this Raptors team last year. I remember coming into the season, I was like, yo, the Raptors are going to be like a playoff team. And I had people telling me no, that's a crazy take. And then lo and behold, we made it to the end of the season and Scotty Barnes looked incredible. Pascal Siakam, amazing. OG, great coaching, and Nick Nurse. This is a team that has a lot of organizational consistency, and they're also, again, a matchup nightmare across the board. They defend with length. They defend with versatility. They're a great team.
They could be a little bit like the Grizzlies of last year in that people just didn't know what to do when they played the Grizzlies, and it was just weird because you've got big lineups and then you've got Ja Morant, which it's good luck figuring that out. And Toronto can kind of bring that too. They have one of the best three coaches in the league in Nick Nurse, which I don't think is anything that anybody else in this division can say is having a coach even close to that.
Not Steve Nash?
What?
No, so Steve Nash, you don't put. I'm teasing. No. I couldn't even keep that going. Okay, go ahead.
Thibodeau? No. And the other thing too with Toronto is I think the conversation with them is they're really well balanced and there's depth there, even though they don't really have a star. But last I checked, Fred VanVleet is an All NBA player.
Yeah,
Pascal Siakam is an All NBA. They have two All NBA guys on this team. I love the stuff that I'm hearing out of there about Precious Achiuwa, but they think he's ready for a leap. And then you've obviously got Scotty Barnes, who's on the fringe of when you're talking about guys who can make the All-Star team in the Eastern Conference this year. You've got to think a bit, at least about Scotty Barnes and the leap that he could potentially make. OG Anunoby is really good too. So and if things go south with Toronto early, that's another team that could probably take a couple of guys and do a little 2-for-1 kind of deal. and maybe poach one of these guys that some of these tanking teams are going to start selling off in December and January. And so I like them. If things are just not working or clicking for whatever reason, they can make a move too.
All right. So before you two gentlemen spoke, I was going to go with the Nets third. You have convinced me to put the Nets fourth. Let's talk
No,
about
Cyrus, dig your heels in. Stick
No,
to
no,
your
I'm
original
not.
take.
I'm not going to dig my heels in on the Nets, not at all. But when you look at the Nets offseason moves, and the other teams really didn't do much in the offseason between the Celtics, basically Malcolm Brogdon was one big pickup. Danilo Gallinari got hurt. The Raptors added Otto Porter Jr., who's injured to start the year. He may or may not be a big pickup. It depends on durability. The Nets did a lot. TJ Warren is out to start the year, but if he actually plays, that's a huge pickup. Royce O'Neal was an underrated pickup. Markieff Morris, decent pickup. They didn't lose anybody of significance. They kept Patty Mills. They kept Nick Claxton. What are we thinking of the Knicks? I saw that video of Ben Simmons. I don't know what that video was. You two know what I'm talking about? Where like they're filming a commercial or
no, they were
some sort
they
of
did their
street ball thing.
annual. They were doing their annual park game that they do in Brooklyn, and yeah,
There
he
you go.
turned around and airballed the shot.
Airballed. It looked awful. And that's all I needed to see to realize, my God, Ben Simmons is a player they're going to rely on. And all you have to do if you're an opposing coach is foul him every time the Nets have the ball. So so the Nets are going to finish fourth. Wes, I'll start with you. What's going to happen with this team? Are we seeing
my biggest
trades?
concern with the Nets is you're relying so much on Ben Simmons just defensively.
Yes.
And we know what kind of defender he is when he's all the way engaged and stuff, but he also played for good defensive teams in Philadelphia. He had help there with Joel Embiid, obviously, and some other guys around him. There's not a whole lot of help in Brooklyn. And so he's going to be basically responsible for making that defense anything close to even league average. And if he does that, he's going to be a contender for Defensive Player of the Year. That's not out of the realm of possibility, but it's just a lot to put on a guy who hasn't played in a year because of mental and back issues. And so that's my biggest concern with them. Obviously, the availability with KD. I really don't know what phase of his career he's in with injuries at this point. Are we at the point where we have to expect him to miss 20 games a year? We might be, you know?
Ooh,
and so, and then with Kyrie Irving, who knows? So, I like the pieces. I like the Royce O'Neal move. I like some of the things that they did. TJ Warren has got health issues too. Like, I don't know how much of an impact he's really going to make on this team, depending on his availability. So there's things I like the highest variance team in the league. If they hit their ceiling, I don't know that there's a team in the NBA that matches their ceiling, right? But if all goes right, but nothing has gone right for this team in the 3 years that they've been together. So I'm not going to bet on it.
Yeah, you summed it up perfectly earlier, Wes, when you said, show me something, right? Like, I need to see something of consequence, for them on the floor, actually proving that this group of guys can mesh together. Because you're right, this team on paper looks like they might be the most talented, possibly one of the deepest teams in the entire association, right? Could easily be a favorite to come out of the Eastern Conference if you get Kyrie to buy in, if you get KD bought in and playing his best basketball, if you get Ben Simmons back to his pre-injury, pre-mental issues, self, all of that. But those are a lot of gigantic, like 72-point font, bold-sized ifs. And I cannot, safely agree with any of them. And it's just really unfortunate because you look at, I still think you put them fourth in the division, because then you've got the Knicks who are they're like trying to find that spark that they had 2 seasons ago. They're, all in on Jalen Brunson and RJ Barrett. And I don't know. They've got a lot of talent, but they're not going to, I feel like you still safely put them at 5th in the division, which is why I'm also just like, this division has the chance to have 5 teams in the playoffs. I don't think there's another division that has that.
You think the Knicks have a chance? Playoffs.
Oh, the Pacific, the Pacific's the only other one that might have 5 teams trying to sniff the playoffs. And again, the Lakers and Kings are a little shaky right now, but I think Knicks kind of maybe safely in that play-in area. But as far as just the other 4, like I've got Sixers, Celtics. I can't safely say Nets are a lock for the playoffs, but like, if we're putting them at 4th in the division, I don't know, play-in territory. It's tough.
My prediction is the Nets and the Knicks play each other in the play-in tournament. In that first
game.
That's
would be fun.
Okay, I like the Knicks as a solid 500 team this year. There's enough talent there. There's enough stuff there.
They only added one player, really, Jalen Brunson. I know Isaiah Hardenstein also, but is that enough? Is Jalen Brunson enough to turn things around there? You think so?
They were 37 and 45 last year. And you add a table setter like Jalen Brunson, it helps RJ Barrett. RJ Barrett's only going to get better. I think Hartenstein's awesome. I think that was a nice addition for them. Mitchell Robinson's going to be back, presumably healthy. Tom Thibodeau's like a fine coach. I know I kind of joked about it earlier. I don't think they're going to be like really in the playoffs. I just think they're going to be a solid 41-41 team.
I don't think they're they're not gonna be able to replicate that one season that they had where they were, again, Julius Randle looked phenomenal,
Yes.
night and day different compared to any other season of his NBA career. Like that was a found money season. They were like, oh, we've got something here with Julius Randle, and then just completely disappointed when the bottom fell out from under them the following season. So I don't think they're gonna be able to replicate that. They're currently, after pursuing Jalen Brunson and now, inking him to his new contract, all that, the Knicks are very much going to be on that treadmill of mediocrity where they're going to be stuck fighting for play-in spots for the next however many years until they ultimately decide, all right, this isn't really working out. We don't have like the top end, the ceiling that we want this team to have. And so now we've got to trade off some pieces. So they're going to be a fun play-in level team for the next like 3-4 seasons until they realize that they don't want to be in the middle of the pack of the NBA.
All right. So we did the preview for the minor leagues. Now it's time for the major leagues, the Western Conference. Sorry, Wes. I don't know. You agree with that? I really do believe that notion that the East is just as good as they are. They don't compare to the West.
I have a hot take. I think the West isn't as good as people are saying it is.
That is a hot take.
We'll get into that in the next show.
Yes, we will. Thank you, folks, for tuning in. Part 2 coming up next.